The crystal glass slipped from her trembling hands and shattered across the marble floor just as the orchestra began playing the evening's most beautiful song. Hundreds of guests turned their heads toward the sound, but no one rushed to help the woman kneeling among the broken pieces. Instead, a sharply dressed event manager looked down at her with cold irritation and told her to clean it up before someone important saw the mess. What nobody in that grand ballroom knew was that the woman they had humiliated, ordered around, and forced to wash dirty dishes in the kitchen was the wife of the man who owned the entire event, the hotel hosting it, and the company that had paid for every golden decoration hanging from the ceiling. Her name was Elena Carter, and she had spent most of her life learning not to judge people by their clothes. That night, however, everyone seemed determined to judge her by hers. She had arrived wearing a simple navy blue dress that had been carefully repaired at the sleeve by her own hands. It wasn't designer clothing, but it was elegant, modest, and meaningful. Her husband, Daniel, had given it to her on their second anniversary, back when they were still living in a tiny apartment and counting every dollar before buying groceries. Daniel had insisted she wear it that evening because the gala was supposed to celebrate a charity that mattered deeply to her. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and never judging someone by their appearance, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear this message, leave a comment, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories of kindness, courage, and hope to people around the world. Elena had no idea that Daniel had planned a surprise for her that night. He had told her that he needed to arrive early because he was helping the organizers with the final arrangements. In reality, he was preparing to reveal something that could change the way everyone in the room saw them. Daniel Carter was the founder and majority owner of Carter Hospitality Group, a company that had quietly grown from one small neighborhood restaurant into a national luxury hotel empire. Despite his wealth, Daniel rarely wore expensive suits when he didn't need to. He disliked attention, hated arrogance, and had never wanted Elena to feel as though his money made her less important. Elena knew he was successful, but she didn't know the full extent of his fortune. Daniel had always told her that money was a tool, not an identity. Their relationship had begun long before the millions. Years earlier, when Daniel was struggling to keep his first restaurant alive, Elena had worked beside him without ever asking how much he could give her. She washed dishes, served customers, balanced receipts, and sometimes stayed awake until 2 in the morning helping him prepare paperwork. When the business finally became successful, Elena stepped away from the company because she wanted to focus on community work and helping struggling families. That was why the gala mattered to her. The event was raising money for families who had lost their homes after a devastating apartment fire. Elena had spent weeks helping organize donations, and she was excited to see the charity receive the attention it deserved. She entered the ballroom expecting to spend the evening quietly supporting the cause. Instead, the moment she walked through the service entrance, everything changed. A young event supervisor named Marcus saw her carrying several boxes of donated materials and immediately assumed she was temporary staff. Without asking her name, he told her to hurry to the kitchen. Elena tried to explain that she was one of the charity volunteers, but the ballroom was already crowded, the kitchen was overwhelmed, and Marcus barely listened. He handed her an apron and told her that someone needed to wash dishes. Elena could have walked away. She could have called Daniel. She could have told Marcus exactly who she was. But she remembered the families the gala was supporting. She didn't want a misunderstanding to become a scene, so she quietly tied the apron around her waist and entered the kitchen. For nearly an hour, Elena stood beside industrial sinks filled with dirty plates, glasses, and silverware. Steam covered the windows, her hands became red from hot water, and her carefully styled hair began falling loose around her face. She didn't complain. She worked beside the exhausted kitchen staff, thanking them and helping wherever she could. Then one of the senior event coordinators, a woman named Victoria, entered the kitchen. Victoria was known for being obsessed with appearances. She believed everyone attending the gala needed to look wealthy, polished, and important. When she saw Elena standing beside the sink, she frowned. She demanded to know why someone dressed so poorly had been allowed into the VIP area. Elena calmly explained that she was a volunteer and that she had been asked to help in the kitchen. Victoria glanced at her dress and laughed under her breath. She told Elena that volunteers were supposed to remain invisible and that people like her shouldn't wander around the ballroom. Elena felt a painful sting in her chest, but she swallowed it. She continued washing dishes. Later, Victoria ordered her to carry a tray of glasses through the ballroom. As Elena stepped into the grand hall, she saw hundreds of guests laughing beneath enormous chandeliers. Men wore tuxedos. Women wore gowns covered in diamonds. Cameras flashed near the stage. For a moment, Elena felt as though she had entered someone else's world. Then Marcus approached her in front of several guests and loudly told her to get back to the kitchen. A few people laughed. Elena lowered her eyes and walked away. She wasn't embarrassed by washing dishes. She was hurt because the people in that room had decided she was worthless without knowing anything about her. Back in the kitchen, Elena stood silently for several seconds. Then she noticed a teenage kitchen assistant struggling to lift a heavy box. Elena immediately helped him. She smiled and told him that nobody should ever be ashamed of honest work. The boy looked at her with gratitude. He didn't know it, but those simple words would become important later. Meanwhile, Daniel had entered the building through a private entrance. He had spent the last hour speaking with the charity's board members and reviewing final arrangements. As the owner of the hotel and primary sponsor of the gala, he had been expected to make a grand entrance. Instead, he had asked his security team not to announce him. He wanted to surprise Elena. But when he walked into the ballroom and didn't see her, his smile disappeared. He searched the main hall, the charity office, and the reception area. Finally, he asked a staff member where his wife was. The answer stunned him. Someone told him that a volunteer named Elena had been sent to the kitchen to wash dishes. Daniel froze. He walked toward the kitchen without another word. As he approached, he heard laughter. Marcus and Victoria were standing near the service door discussing the woman they considered an insignificant volunteer. Victoria was complaining that Elena had no place near the gala's important guests. Then Daniel entered. The room became silent. The kitchen staff stared at him. Marcus immediately straightened his jacket. Victoria's face changed when she recognized him. Daniel didn't look at either of them. He looked across the kitchen. And there she was. Elena stood beside the sink, her hands wet, her sleeves rolled up, and a small cut visible on one finger. Her dress was partially hidden beneath the apron. She looked tired, but she was still helping another worker clean plates. Daniel's heart broke. He walked directly toward her. Elena looked up and smiled with relief, unaware of what was about to happen. Daniel gently took the apron from her hands. Then he turned toward the room. He asked who had ordered his wife to wash dishes. Nobody answered. Marcus looked terrified. Victoria tried to explain that it had been a misunderstanding, but Daniel raised his hand and calmly stopped her. He asked why nobody had bothered to learn Elena's name. Then he revealed the truth. He told them Elena wasn't merely his wife. She was the person who had stood beside him when he had nothing. She was the woman who had washed dishes in his first restaurant when they couldn't afford extra staff. She was the reason he had never forgotten what it felt like to struggle. And then Daniel looked around the kitchen and said something nobody there would ever forget. He explained that the gala was being held in his hotel. The ballroom belonged to his company. The catering company worked under his contract. The event had been funded by his foundation. Every chandelier, every table, every plate, and every chair in that building existed under the responsibility of the company he owned. The woman they had treated like she was beneath them was the wife of the man who had made the entire evening possible. Silence filled the kitchen. Victoria began apologizing, but Daniel didn't shout. His disappointment was far more powerful than anger. He told her that the problem wasn't that Elena had been asked to wash dishes. Honest work deserved respect. The problem was that she had been treated with cruelty because someone assumed she wasn't important. Daniel then turned toward the kitchen workers. He thanked them. He thanked the people washing dishes, preparing food, carrying boxes, cleaning floors, and working behind the scenes while wealthy guests enjoyed the evening. He told them that without them, there would be no gala. The young kitchen assistant who had struggled with the heavy box looked at Elena with tears in his eyes. Elena placed a hand on his shoulder. Then Daniel did something unexpected. He asked everyone in the kitchen to come into the ballroom. The guests watched as the kitchen staff entered together. For the first time that evening, the people who normally remained invisible stood beneath the chandeliers. Daniel walked to the stage and introduced Elena. He didn't describe her as the wife of a millionaire. He described her as the person who had taught him that wealth meant nothing if you couldn't use it to lift someone else. Then he announced that the foundation would immediately increase the gala's donation to the families affected by the fire. But he also announced something else. From that night forward, every employee working for Carter Hospitality Group would receive improved wages, better benefits, and a direct channel for reporting disrespectful treatment. Daniel said he didn't want a company where people were only valued when customers were watching. The room erupted in applause. Elena stood beside him with tears streaming down her cheeks. She had never wanted revenge. She had only wanted respect. After the event, Daniel and Elena returned home late that night. Elena removed her repaired navy dress and carefully folded it over a chair. Daniel sat beside her and apologized for not being there sooner. She smiled through her tears and told him that he didn't need to apologize. She said the evening had taught her something. People often reveal who they are when they think nobody important is watching. Daniel took her hand and reminded her that kindness was never wasted, even when the person receiving it couldn't reward you. Weeks later, the gala became famous for something completely different than expected. Photos of Elena washing dishes circulated online, but the story wasn't about humiliation anymore. It became a reminder that dignity doesn't come from expensive clothes, famous names, or bank accounts. Victoria eventually left the company after refusing to accept responsibility for her behavior. Marcus apologized personally to Elena and later became one of the strongest advocates for respectful treatment of staff. The young kitchen assistant received a scholarship through Daniel's foundation and eventually went to culinary school. And Elena? She continued volunteering. She continued wearing simple clothes. She continued helping people who had nothing to offer her in return. Because she understood something that night that money could never teach. True wealth is not measured by what you own. It is measured by how you treat people who cannot give you anything back. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes that every person deserves dignity, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your support allows these stories of compassion, courage, and second chances to reach more people. And before you go, I want you to leave one special comment: kindness is true wealth. Write those words if you believe that someone's clothes, job, or social status should never determine how much respect they deserve. Because sometimes, the person standing quietly in the corner is carrying a story you know nothing about. Sometimes, the person washing the dishes is the one who built the entire house. And sometimes, the greatest lesson in life comes when we finally realize that the people we thought were beneath us may have been the very people standing above us all along. Elena never forgot that night. Neither did anyone else. And from that day forward, whenever Daniel entered one of his hotels, he made sure to visit the kitchen first. Not because he owned the building, but because he had learned that the true heart of every great place was not found beneath the chandeliers.